All right, folks, we are live again. Today we're going to be talking about Syria, Overthrown. That's the topic today. I'm just getting a lot of background noise. Let me just do something here very quickly. Okay, great. Let me give you guys the link to the Discord. Join the live discussion here. Boom. All right, those of you who just joined us, make sure you smash a like button. I don't know why that just did that. That's really weird. Oh, there's ghosts in the machine today. Travis Pangburn believes in ghosts. Kill him. Sorry, I'm just getting into the topic. Okay, Syria overthrown. There we go. Boom. Going to share this at the Discord. Those of you on Discord, please don't be shy to chill out with our beautiful audience on YouTube. Copy that. I'll give you guys this link. Boom. All right, as always, I'm going to start with a bit of reading. We are going to go through what is currently going on in Syria, a little bit of history, a little bit of a rundown on who these rebels are, and a little bit on the reactions we've heard thus far from different leaders around the planet. And then we're going to open up the discussion and talk this through. All right. So the history of Syria under the Assad family. We'll actually. I'm going to do that after. Let's do this. So on December 8th, today, Syrian President Bashar al-Assad fled to Moscow with his family after rebel forces seized the capital, Damascus, effectively ending his 24-year rule and the Assad family's 5-decade-long governance of Syria. Russia granted the Assad family asylum on humanitarian grounds. The rapid advance of rebel factions, notably Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, HTS, led to the swift collapse of government defenses. Rebels encountered minimal resistance as they entered Damascus, prompting widespread celebrations and the looting of Assad's presidential palace. In response to the regime's fall, Israel moved to secure its interests by seizing the buffer zone in the Golan Heights, citing the collapse of previous border agreements. The international community has expressed cautious optimism regarding Syria's future, emphasizing the importance of a peaceful transition and the establishment of an inclusive government. The situation remains fluid, with various factions vying for control and efforts underway to stabilize the nation after years of civil war. So a little bit on the Assad family's history. And this includes a complex narrative that spans decades, shaped by political authoritarianism, regional and international dynamics, and more recently, this devastating civil war. So, Hafez al-Assad, 1971 to 2000, the architect of modern Syrian authoritarianism. Hafez al-Assad, a member of the Alawite minority, seized power in 1971 through a military coup. His rule was characterized by centralized authority, an iron grip on dissent, and efforts to stabilize Syria amidst Cold War rivalries and regional tensions. Sounds like Russia, and a bit like Putin. Key features of his rule: Consolidation of power. Hafez centralized power around the Ba'ath party and himself, using a vast security apparatus to suppress dissent. Established a cult of personality, promoting himself as the father of modern Syria. Regional policies. Pursued pan-Arabism and maintained a staunchly anti-Israel stance, including involvement in the Yom Kippur War in 1973. Occupied Lebanon in 1976 during the Lebanese Civil War, maintaining influence there for decades. Economic policies. Adopted a socialist approach, nationalizing industries and implementing land reforms. Economic stagnation and corruption became endemic, disproportionately affecting marginalized groups. Repression. The 1982 Hama massacre, where thousands were killed in suppressing an Islamist uprising, symbolized Hafez's brutal rule. Then we go to Bashar al-Assad, 2000 to present, well, at least until yesterday. Reform hopes to civil war. Bashar al-Assad succeeded his father in 2000, initially raising hopes to reform and modernization. However, his rule has been dominated by authoritarianism, corruption, and a protracted civil war. Key phases of his rule. Early rule, 2000 to 2011. Reform hopes promised modernization, internet access, and limited economic liberalization. Authoritarian continuity. Political freedoms remained restricted. Dissent was met with harsh crackdowns. Economic changes opened up parts of the economy, leading to growing inequality and resentment among rural populations. Arab Spring and the Syrian Civil War, 2011 to present. Origins of the conflict. The Arab Spring protests in 2011 sparked demonstrations in Syria against corruption, inequality, and repression. Assad's regime responded with violence, escalating the conflict into civil war. Sectarianism and regional involvement. The war polarized along ethnic and sectarian lines, with Assad leveraging support for the Alawite minority. Regional and global powers, including Iran, Hezbollah, Russia, and the US and Turkey, became involved. Humanitarian catastrophe. Hundreds of thousands killed and millions displaced. The use of chemical weapons and indiscriminate bombing led to widespread condemnation. ISIS emergence. The power vacuum facilitated the rise of extremist groups like ISIS, adding another layer of complexity. Current situation. That one's not updated. Parts of Syria remain outside government control, including Kurdish-held territories and areas controlled by Turkish-backed forces. The country faces immense economic challenges with widespread poverty and infrastructure devastation. The legacy and global perception. Hafez al-Assad is seen as a shrewd tactician who maintained regional influence but ruled with repression. And Bashar al-Assad, who's been just dethroned, viewed as a divisive figure who clings to power at immense human and economic costs. His rule is synonymous with one of the worst humanitarian crises of the 21st century. So let's hear. Okay, first I want to go to this, and then we'll get the responses from the world leaders. The recent overthrow of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad was orchestrated by a coalition of rebel groups, each with distinct ideologies and regional influences. The primary factions involved include Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, HTS. Background: HTS, led by Abu Muhammad al-Jalani, originated from al-Qaeda's Syrian branch, but has since rebranded itself, claiming to sever ties with global jihadist movements. Role in the offensive. HTS spearheaded the, quote, deterrence of aggression, end quote, operation, making significant advancements in northwestern Syria, including the capture of Aleppo. Current position. Despite its extremist origins, HTS has attempted to present a more moderate image, engaging with Western media and aid organizations. However, concerns persist regarding its commitment to democratic principles. The SNA, the Syrian National Army. Background. The SNA is a Turkish-backed coalition of opposition groups operating primarily in northern Syria. Role in the offensive. Allied with HTS, the SNA participated in coordinated attacks against pro-government forces, contributing to the rapid territorial gains. Current position, the SNA maintains close ties with Turkey, which influences its strategic objectives and operations. Southern Operations Room, SOR. Background, established on December 6, 2024, just now, the SOR is a coalition of rebel groups, including the Southern Front of the El Jabal Brigade, operating in southern Syria. Role in the offensive. The SOR launched attacks in the Dara and As-Suwaida governance, targeting government installations and advancing towards Damascus from the south. Current position, the SOR emphasizes maintaining security and stability in the regions under its control, advocating for a unified and just Syria. Syria Democratic Forces, SDF. Background, the SDF is a Kurdish-led alliance that has been a key U.S. partner in the fight against ISIS, controlling significant portions of northeastern Syria. Role in the offensive. Amid the regime's collapse, the SDF expanded its control, capturing areas like Deir Zor and parts of Aleppo, often filling vacuums left by retreating government forces. Current position. The SDF seeks to maintain autonomy in its regions while navigating complex relations with other rebel groups and neighboring Turkey. Syrian Free Army, the SFA. Background. The SFA is a U.S.-backed faction that emerged from remnants of the Free Syrian Army, advocating for a democratic Syria. Role in the offensive. The SFA advanced from southern Syria towards Damascus, capturing strategic locations such as Palmyra. Current position. The SFA aims to play a significant role in Syria's political transition, promoting democratic governance and human rights. For everyone on Discord, I'm going to copy all this information and paste it for you guys so we can recall it when we need to. A couple points. Syria currently is approximately 87% Muslim, 10% Christian, and then the rest is made up of other religious groups. The last thing I want to read, and I know this is a lot of information, but Syria is fucking complicated. The ousting of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad has elicited a spectrum of reactions from global leaders, reflecting varied perspectives on Syria's future and regional stability. United States. President Joe Biden described Assad's fall as a historic opportunity for Syria, emphasizing the importance of a democratic transition while cautioning against potential instability. France. President Emmanuel Macron declared the barbaric state has fallen, honoring the resilience of Syrian people and reaffirming France's commitment to Middle Eastern security. Germany, Chancellor Olaf Scholz labeled the end of Assad's regime as good news, advocating for stability and protection of minorities in Syria. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau stated that the fall of Assad's dictatorship ends decades of brutal oppression, underscoring Canada's support for the Syrian people's aspirations. Russia. The Russian foreign minister confirmed Assad's resignation and departure to Russia, but emphasized non-involvement in his decision to leave Syria. Iran. The Iranian foreign minister asserted that determining Syria's future is solely the responsibility of the Syrian people, signaling a stance of non-interference. Israel. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu welcomed Assad's ousting, attributed it to the blows we have inflicted on Iran and Hezbollah, and highlighted Israel's strategic interests in the region. Turkey, President Recep Erdogan expressed hope for peace and stability in Syria, emphasizing the necessity for an inclusive administration representing all segments of Syrian society. The United Nations Special Envoy for Syria, Geir Pedersen, described Assad's downfall as a watershed moment and called for urgent talks to ensure an orderly political transition. Okay, a lot of information there. Hello, everyone who's joined us. Make sure you smash the like button on YouTube. Really appreciate it. So, Nate, you seem to have an interest in what's going on in Syria. Do correct me if I'm wrong, but what do you make of what's going on so far?
Yeah, and so first I'll do the first thing first is like the my almsgiving is that I have an interest in IR and international politics, and so there's always this seeming ease to sort of dehumanize the situation. And so I'm not trying to do that. I'll just mention that I think it's easy to miss that the composition of politics in the Middle East. This is a fairly significant event that dates back to Jimmy Carter's presidency. Yeah. And so, when, if you go and you look up, old, State Department or CIA documents, the U.S. has basically always accepted that, the al-Assad regime, starting with former President al-Assad's father, and his uncle as well. It was always based out of Damascus. It was always sort of this an attempt at, to some extent neutrality, as well as trying to keep pan-Arabism on the table. And so there's always been these sort of competing forces where, where on from the perspective of the U.S. and Israel, trying to push more matters through the UN, and trying to sort of figure out how Western diplomacy works. And on the other side of it, you also had the al-Assad regime both competing as well as in some smaller ways cooperating with Iraq and other regional players. And so it's this weird thing, you had a government that, tried to unify, had a stated purpose of, in some ways, unifying Arab states while also modernizing the state infrastructure. And, at the end of the day, you also had these sort of really deeply competing forces, also sort of in the mix where, everyone could say, we're not going to be governed by the socialists who basically, they'll sell out our freedoms and our rights for jets. They'll sell out our ideology for jets or whatever it is, tanks. And so, I think with the depth that Syria had in the past operated around Lebanon or with the PLO, it's the fact that is apparently cleared from the table is a little chaotic and stuff. But I think my main concern right now, just personally, is what happens with human rights institutions, how are regional and global powers seeing this as an opportunity to barter or to better balance the system.
Yeah. And another important thing too is that hopefully, and it seems a bit unclear here, but it seems like this will bring the civil war that's been going on since 2011 to pretty much an end, right? Like I'm hoping this is going to be the case. It seems like this is a lot of people's belief right now, but the civil war has caused 500,000 deaths since 2011 in Syria. And Syria, what is the population of Syria? It's at 24.67 million people. Yeah, this is not a large place, and 500,000 people dying from a population of 24 million people. That's fucking devastating.
Yeah, Travis, I just remember even, I mean, even in like, a couple years ago, it was normal to see that, airstrikes were hitting in civilian areas in Syria.
Yeah.
Um, and, it's difficult, in the West, if you don't understand sort of, the politics or regional issues, you see these massive stories start like adding on these smaller components and smaller
Yeah.
components of just violence against civilians. It's easy to sort of wash over the impact that this has had on human lives, people of all ages, all make, shapes, sizes, all that stuff.
Yeah, you do get. I think with the Syria issue, because it's been going on so long, there is that phenomenon of being desensitized to hearing about more happenings over in Syria. It's just you hear it so much, and it's like oh, another airstrike, but that's normal for that area. It. I think it's yeah. I think that's right that you can really find yourself being desensitized to this news, that if it was in some other place that it's not a regular thing to be happening, that you would be morally outraged to hear of such news.
Yeah, and Travis, when you were doing research, was there any news on the what's it called? So about the rebels group or their plans for like a new government or whatever
Nothing.
that looks like?
Yeah, nothing yet, but there are many discussions happening between these groups right now of how this pie is going to be cut up, because like I think like obviously, well, I think most of the Western world is hoping that a democracy is carved up out of this. But there are competing groups with competing with different interests and goals, and some seem to be pro democracy and some aren't. So you know, I think I think it would be great that the more wealthy nations of the world give all the resources and assistance that can be given to Syria, so that the Syrian public, whatever they decide, or the Syrian people get what Syria truly does want. Just generally, obviously, no one ever gets everything they want, but I think uh, throw this is the time for everyone who has interests in seeing Syria not fall back into civil war. This is the time to throw the resources in there, to come in and help, to come up humanitarian aid to infrastructure, all of these different things that could help this transition of power, and not go in there and like force the issue necessarily, because that can cause all kinds of other issues, but just make sure that a lack of resources doesn't lead to any kind of you know a an authoritarian necessity because things are so bad right now. Let's flood them with all the good stuff, I think. But I think that I agree with Justin Trudeau in Canada that this is a fantastic opportunity for Syria, and at least for those who love democracy and think democracy is the key to peace here. There are some of these groups, the SDF and the SFA, that are U.S. funded, U.S. supported groups in Syria that want to see democracy in the region. So
Yeah, there's just always the issue of throwing I think whenever we see, whenever I see in situations where, it's not clear if the government's going, if the new groups are going to be capable, what they will be capable of in terms of forming a new government, and what does life look like, in the first 180 days or something like that? What sort of constitution emerges from that? It's just, as someone who both supports the U.S. government very deeply, as well as who really wants to support other states, there's also practical, ethical, and moral questions.
right, and you're right about that. Of course, it seems like the HTS has the most power. The Hayat Tahrir al Sham, and they've had the governance experience in Idlib. HTS has effectively administered the Idlib governance through the establishment of Syrian Salvation Government, SSG. The governing body oversees various civil affairs, including education, healthcare, public services for the population exceeding 4 million people, and this is in Idlib. So currently, my understanding is that the HTS in Syria right now has the most experience in governing public services and infrastructure. So they're probably going to be, play a big role in this. And I'm interested to actually see the religious breakdown of each rebel group, if I can get it. Does anyone else have anything to add at this moment? We got Brett, we got Bo, El Rito, F around and find out, Bogey, anyone who wants to chime in, Phalanx, feel free to unmute and give it a shot. Go ahead, F. Oh, we're not hearing F.
What now? How about now?
Oh, yeah, we can hear you now. You're a little bit quiet, but...
A little bit. All right. I'll try to talk up. I am ecstatic, super happy. I think it's a great day for the Middle East. It's a great day for Syria. And it's a great day for the rest of the civilized world. I think it's a terrible day for Russia. I think it's a terrible day for Iran. And I think it's a terrible day for all the people in the world that want to see Israel annihilated. So just wanted to throw that out there. Very happy, very optimistic. At the same time, concerned because, the situations like these, by definition, are ripe for, corruption and, having it go south. It's been a revolution in Syria and it's real dangerous. This is the most dangerous time. And I think that what Trump is saying aligns perfectly with Russia's interests to look at HDS as our enemies and to not get involved. I think that's the opposite of what the United States should do.
I agree with you.
And what the Western world should do. So yeah, we have to wait and see.
I hope my Canadian brethren gets involved in there, and we send all of our goodness and love over there, and what resources are required or what Canada can provide to help the Syrian people realize a government they truly do want. And for me, it's like
100%.
Yeah.
I mean, every day.
So is there just like a consensus then? It seems like in the room that Damascus just, and like not to undermine that Assad's regime, committed war crimes. They were willing to use violence against civilians. But does Damascus as a whole, was there like no will to keep Assad in power? No way to sort of consolidate? Like, is this uniformly just like period sort of a good thing right there?
It's a uniform good thing, yeah.
That's my opinion. One of the big things here is that it looks like this long war. What are we at? 13 years. 13-year civil war has come to an end. And that's a big thing in and of itself. The one thing about the HTS that I know that is going to be hard to stomach for some people, that the religious affiliation of the HTS is Sunni Islamist and has Salafi jihadist roots. Now, that's going to be playing a huge role in the discussions about when people start getting into the conversations about, okay, is Syria, at risk of becoming an Islamist state, an Islamist state here. And I know that many people in the West, I don't want to see another large population of women, for example, enslaved into burqas and put under Sharia law. I don't want to see that happen. It seems like there's too much, like the SDF, for example, is a secular group in Syria with Kurdish leadership. We have, Sunni Muslims are the other groups are mostly Sunni Muslims or Islamists, which are different, of course. Like the Syrian National Army, the SNA, is a Sunni Muslim group, and that's one of the USA appointed or supported groups in the region. So like people who want to see who don't want to see Islamists and jihadists gain any power in the region, they're going to have a problem with HTS probably running things, especially if there's an idea of trying to radicalize the region in the way that we see Islamic states ran in many of the cases, especially when what I see is enslavement policies against women start becoming enacted. So any thoughts on that? Go ahead, Brett. Feel free to speak up, everyone, because we have an open room here. So
yeah, we're going to see them enact policies that they've done in their region they were administering prior to the final showdown with Damascus. Sorry, I'm choking to death here. Yeah, I mean, they were they administered their territory in a very fundamentalist way. They ran the territory that they had exactly as you would expect a Salafist jihadist group to do. So I wouldn't be surprised to see them try and start enacting that on a larger scale now that they've pushed Assad out of power.
And you're talking about HTS, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes, HTS.
Yeah. So that's the worry here. Go ahead, Brett.
I was going to say that, with the proximity to Iraq and just, what happened after the fall of Saddam and such, with different groups throughout Iraq, you would hope that they would learn from that, to see, what absolutely didn't work, to where they do need to work in some kind of democratic form to, bring something stable together. But yeah, I think you make a good point. It's really, it seems like it's very hard to fight against extremists all the way around the world, because they at times, do they want the same thing everybody else? Well, they want part of that, but they also want something, super out there that they're willing to put their lives on the line for it, which is really, the idea that we're, we at times are ideologically against people who just basically say, yeah, half the species is not equal. Like, that is really, to me, the fact that idea has not died, man.
Yeah.
We got a lot of work to do as a species.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's why I think that so many leaders, the general attitude towards this is cautious optimism, because as bad as Assad, as the Assad regime has been, what could come in and replace it could mean just devastating I would call them anti-human laws that become enacted because of a complete shift into radical Islamism. So that's something to be cautious about. But like I said, I hope that the more progressive attitudes and the more moderate attitudes win out here. And I know that there are a lot of secular pressures in the region as well, and I hope that will have some influence. Go ahead, F.
Yeah, well, I was going to say what you said about the cautious optimism, but, and obviously they have their Al-Qaeda roots, but this fear-mongering that, this is going to happen, it's going to be terrible, they're going to do all this to women, they're going to be, radical Islamist, state. I think it's premature. I think you have to judge these type of groups through what they say and what they do and who their leaders are. And from what I've heard and seen so far from Julani, who I believe is, I don't know, the head chieftain or the warlord of the HTS, he seems to be highly intelligent to me. He doesn't strike me as being somebody who would fly planes into the United States. He doesn't speak like that. He's changed the rhetoric drastically, such that it's not even remotely similar to what an Al-Qaeda leader would have said.
Well,
as soon as
we can look at their evidence here of how they have for to look at one issue, how women have been treated in Idlib, right? That's what Bojangles here was talking about. So HTS is operating primarily in Syria's Idlib province, enforces conservative interpretations of Islamic law that significantly impact women's rights and freedoms. So the dress code and public conduct. HTS mandates that women adhere to strict dress codes, including wearing hijab and, in some areas, the niqab. Women are expected to dress modestly in public spaces. There are reports of HTS enforcing gender segregation in schools and public areas, limiting interactions between men and women. Freedom of movement. In certain HTS-controlled areas, women may be required to be accompanied by male guardian. This is mahram when traveling, restricting their autonomy. Employment and education. HTS's policies have led to the closure of some women's centers and organizations, impacting women's access to education and employment opportunities. This group has imposed restrictions on women's participation in public life, affecting their roles in various sectors. And then we also have human rights abuses. Someone's making noise in the background. It might be you, Brett. Human rights abuses. HTS has been accused of severe human rights violations, including forced marriages and operating prostitution rings. Reports indicate that the group has engaged in sex slavery and human trafficking. Repression of women's activism. Women's rights activists and organizations have faced threats and attacks from HTS. For instance, the Mazaya Center, a women's organization in Idlib, was burned down by HTS in 2016. So while the HTS has attempted to rebrand itself, and you were talking there, F, about trying to rebrand itself through the public speaking and saying the right things to the right audiences, but we need to make sure we're not influenced by that and forget about the data of what's been going on in HTS controlled regions. So it wants to rebrand itself as a more moderate group, but its treatment of women remains oppressive. So that should be a deep issue to anyone that believes in women's rights here.
Oh, I agree,
Travis. Can I
just let's take it a little bit?
Let's let F respond, and then we'll go to Nate. Yeah.
No, I agree with the cautious optimism. And I'm sure everything you said is spot on. I don't doubt it at all. But that isn't what has happened in the past 10 days. I'm just judging it on what I've seen of Julani personally and heard of him
you're
in the last 10 days.
Okay.
I'm talking about the present. And what I was going to say the first time is that as soon as he took Damascus, he went immediately on television and he said, peace, don't go after anybody who put their weapons down, took their uniforms off, leave them be. And, I think I'm cautiously optimistic that the things that you said they were responsible for may not, hopefully will not be replicated based on the rhetoric he's translating or communicating at the moment. He's speaking very middle of the road. He's talking about, representatives type of government. He's talking about giving other people rights. And I've seen a lot of the crowds that are celebrating in the streets. And guess what? I see women without hijab. So if they were so gung-ho about that.
Well, HTS isn't in power though, right? Right, F? So those women, there are secular militant groups in Syria right now that are all, there's a bunch of different groups a part of this. We were talking about HTS, but the worry here is that if HTS or one of the other Islamic fundamentalist Islamic regimes are to take power, or groups are to take power, that the same governance that's been happening in Syria in these other provinces would be happening, generally across the board in Syria. So I get what you're saying. Like, the hope is like, okay, now HTS has to realize, now that this has happened, everyone's opinion matters here from various groups. But we'll see how far that goes. But it should be and like you said, it's like, okay, yeah, he's saying the thing publicly of like, if people throw down their weapons, they should be, be given full quarter. I think that's what any of us would do probably in this room. I'm assuming. So yeah, he's doing the right thing in these moments, but what has he been doing in Al-Dabib, or I think that's the province's name, for all this time, and the policies he has supported that have been repressive to women? We'll get into some other policies of torture and different things that have been going on through the HTS as well. But I did say I'd pass the mic to Nate.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the few cases where I'll pile on a point. Sure. And I think this is sort of echoing kind of what both you guys are saying. Another fact to consider is that it has been truly the Kurds in Syria, even though they're a very small minority, have really been the only voice for sort of more progressive pluralist forms of democracy, from what I understand. And playing politics and being a Kurd and living in Syria has been, at best sort of like it's been a full contact sport, right? It's not something that, and that's just how politics is in a lot of places. How it could be or should be. But Kurds have gotten assassinated in the region, and that's not a new phenomenon, right? You went from a group that used to have pluralist participation, and you can, if you want to go back to 1940, whenever, you can play the blame game and say, well, why was it the case that that politics in the Middle East had to become either made ethnic or racial or religious or whatever it was. Yeah. But the fact is that in 2024, pluralism still sits with the Kurds, I think, and I think that's one of the tougher ideas to get over when you're trying to figure out does the question even make sense, I guess, is what I think. Can we talk about what the next government might do to build an inclusive or fair or non-repressive form of government? Does that make sense if we're not including who the little guy has always been?
Yeah, of course not. It's either it's either an inclusive government or not. It can't be inclusive minus the Kurds, right? So I wanted to read a little bit more here. So HTS, an Islamic militant group operating primarily in Syria's Idlib province, has been implicated in numerous human rights abuses and criminal activities, including arbitrary arrests and torture. HTS has detained activist journalists and civilians critical of its rules, subjecting them many to torture. Human Rights Watch documented cases of detainees being held without charge and tortured in HTS-controlled areas. Suppression of free speech. The group has targeted individuals involved in peaceful protests or documentation of abuses, aiming to silence dissent and control information. Forced disappearances. HTS has been accused of abducting individuals with families, often left without information about their loved ones' whereabouts. Sexual violence and exploitation. Reports indicate that HTS has engaged in forced marriages, and we already went through that, and operated prostitution rings, subjecting women to sexual slavery. Extrajudicial killings. The group has executed individuals without fair trials, targeting those accused of opposing its authority or collaborating with adversaries. Recruitment of child soldiers. HTS has been reported to recruit children into its ranks, exposing them to combat and exploitation. Attacks on civilians. The group has launched attacks resulting in civilian casualties, including strikes on populated areas and infrastructure. So we're talking about this group, HTS, looking at being the front runner, or at least the group with the most power at the moment in the region. A lot of things that Westerners, wouldn't stand for, and of course, most people would find morally deplorable. Who else has something? Feel free to chime in. Anyone who's interested. This probably won't be a super long episode, but I wanted to make sure we addressed it in the community. And this is one of those topics that the details do really matter, because and the details are vast and deep.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Can you give me like the 30-second run version of what happened? I am totally unaware of the situation.
Well, you
revolution. Revolution in Syria.
Yeah. Revolution overturn. Assad, who's been in power since I believe 2011, but there's been like 24 years that the Assad family has been in power.
50.
It's like since the Cold War, Russia has been supporting that regime over there, but now because Russia is getting its ass kicked over there in Ukraine. And Israel is doing such a good job in the region. I think they just lost influence over there.
So something to be said is I want to read this again. Just what the Russian, and I believe Iran was brought up, so I might as well read that again of what. So Russia said, the Russian Foreign Ministry confirmed Assad's resignation and departure to Russia, but emphasized non-involvement in his decision to leave Syria. So they're kind of like, so far they're hands off on the issue at the moment. But obviously this just happened, so we'll wait to hear. The Iranian foreign minister asserted that determining Syria's future is solely the responsibility of the Syrian people, signaling a stance of non-interference. And we haven't heard from Iraq yet.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's really important, right? The Russia thing being in the region for so long instead of being backed by the West. I read that the West has been trying to back rebels in the area for a long time, but then those rebel groups are being co-opted by jihadists like ISIS and other groups. So it's like, okay.
Well, here's you bring up a really important thing. So let's get to that. So let's look at the fighting between Russia and HTS. So HTS being the group we were just reading about, who seems to have the majority of power right now in Syria at this very moment. So Russian military actions against HTS. Russia has conducted numerous airstrikes against HTS positions in Idlib and surrounding areas, aiming to weaken the group's military capabilities. Because remember, Russia was supporting Assad, right? Russia was in support of the Assad regime, and all of these other groups are the rebel groups, HTS being the biggest one. Russia designates HTS as a terrorist organization and has consistently advocated for military operations against the group in international forums. So yeah, Russia's guy lost here, got overthrown, and I think it's right that their foreign policy here has failed in that region. There's no evidence that Russia has altered its stance towards HTS. So it'll be interesting. What if this is an interesting thing now that Assad's out, it's overthrown. If Russia will back off of Syria, and or is Russia gonna further its goals in Syria now that the group that they believe to be a terrorist regime now is sitting on a position of power, not absolute power. It's really early stages. We're a day old here, but it'll be interesting to see what happens there with Russia's involvement.
Yeah, I'm not sure where you got that Russia is hands off. I think Russia is 100% hands on in the situation. I think they always have been.
I said, sorry, F, let me clarify. I said they've been hands on, but now that HTS is in power, I'm wondering if, because the Assad regime has lost and at least they're ousted for now, if they'll be hands off that region.
Oh, I could tell you the answer to that's no. Russia is just waiting for a chance to get back into Syria at the nearest possible opportunity. That's why they took Assad in, to keep him safe, to keep him happy, to keep him comfortable. And Russia is not going to just abandon Syria. Syria is an incredibly important country as far as, control and influence in the region is concerned, not just where it's located, but its connections to the various Arab groups. It's a critical country to control.
So
whoever controls.
Yeah. How do you know all that stuff about why Russia took in Assad? Because we've only heard from the foreign minister say a small little thing about it, but you're adding all this extra stuff to their reasons of why they're doing this.
Well, I'm just talking, I guess, more from common sense. I hadn't heard everybody from Russia say it. I know what Russia's interests are in the region. I was kind of explaining what those interests are, and they're not going to abandon those interests.
Let me just color that a little bit. I mean, Russia has a big naval base in Syria. They have access to the Mediterranean Sea. They can't operate there without it. And it is a major blow to Russia, influencing the region. How easy these rebels seemingly just taking city after city, it's making them look so bad right now, right?
Yeah.
Russia.
Yeah. So.
I agree.
Yeah, there's some good justifications to know that, but I'm just kind of getting. I think we should, not play the mind reading game of how much Russia cares about Assad at this very moment. Do you think that Russia's interested in trying to fight to reinstate Assad, the rightful ruler, back onto his throne, or do you think it's more like they want control of their strategic positions back? Or
I think this is just my take, right? I mean, yes, they can try to put that guy back if he's popular. If he's not popular, they're just gonna, whoever is popular, they're gonna try to influence through another person, or try to cut a deal with the rebels, so they can keep the influence. But just how things are going, there's a chance that they might choose another partner. It might be Israel, it might be the West, Europe. I will say Iran too, but Iran is also getting his ass kicked. So, so to speak, right?
I highly doubt that Syria will, or that HTS and Israel are going to be friends. I highly doubt that.
Just out of convenience,
you might be surprised.
Right? I hope I'm surprised. Yeah.
You will be.
It sort of sounds conspiratorial, but Russia also is always. They've done pretty well and been able to sort of exert soft power through, just toting, the anti-Islamist campaigns, right? And Syria was a place where they could do that and do that pretty unapologetically.
Hey, I really take everything Russia says with a grain of salt, and I'm not saying that's what it is, but Russia in their channels, they're saying that they have been keeping Christians in Syria safe, right? Like that's kind of their.
I don't know if that's.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's what I'm saying. Like I appreciate your opinion, but I think if you're talking about the rise of theocratic or ideological government, that's like normal state behavior to talk about something like that.
No, I mean,
I would disagree with the impact it has on civilians, but this is what every government, and if you want to move it into, just look at what's going on in Israel right now. If you want to look at what people will do to take that to the extreme.
Well, there's a lot to unpack there, but I'm just saying, Russia being clearly supporting this authoritarian regime, right? I mean, this is the father and then the son, and then all the way to the Cold War. I mean, Russia has a very bad record of keep. You said soft power. That soft power has been a civil war in Syria, for example, right? I mean, it's not very soft, that so to speak, right? I mean, at one point, this Assad guy asked the support of Russian, air forces to just carpet bomb, just like we've seen in Ukraine, areas, cities in Syria to take back control of regions. I mean, it's not. Russia's influence in that region is not a good thing. I just gotta, be clear on that, right? So any positives outlooks on Russia being there, I'm really skeptical. Yeah.
There are none. But I'd just like to say one thing about the Israel HDS potential connection. Obviously, ideologically they're opposed, but what I saw happen was with Israel's ceasefire in Lebanon. I saw what I believe was coordination and timing. I believe Israel, part of the reason they decided to engage in the ceasefire was because they had full knowledge that HDS was going to go into Syria. I'm guessing, right, obviously, but I look at the evidence I see in front of me. I see coordination already.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Anyone else want to weigh in? We have, I think we have Svex on. Let's see. I just want to make sure you have the ability to speak here.
Yo.
Oh, yeah, you do. Yeah, do you have anything to add?
I always do, but I like to often reserve what I have to add because I like to think a little bit deeper and a little bit further into the past and the future. And oftentimes what people say in the moment, they don't get back to review. They don't know how to check themselves before they wreck themselves. And the thing, Travis, sorry to come in here, I put in the side chat, doesn't seem that people are using the benefits of advanced computing today to ask their LLM what might be some things to say that aren't what everyone else might say. So what do you think about some of the potential, even black swan probability things? But the one that I really liked, realizing that you're also a Canadian, is the potential for a truth and reconciliation process and a new Syrian Mandela. I put it in the side chat, sorry.
A new Syrian Mandela.
I don't get it.
I don't know what it is. The point is it's something that's worthy of at least potentially discussing rather than, no, you're wrong. No, you're wrong. My dad has bigger artillery than your dad, sort of conversations that for 2 years I've been listening to and hoping to nudge in certain more critical thinking ways from people in the war in Ukraine and Gaza. Sorry.
Are you saying there's an apartheid?
It's an interesting situation.
Are you saying there's an apartheid in Syria? When I think Mandela, I think apartheid.
No. Don't think the first thing you think. That's one of the things about critical thinking, perhaps, hypothetically.
All right.
You're talking about the comment, right? You said charismatic leader emerges in Syria, right? That's what you meant by Mandela, I think.
I don't know. I asked it to come up with some potentially out-of-the-box things so I wouldn't even have to do any work. And the first one was a grassroots reconciliation and bottom-up peace building. The second one was a regional power brokerage and a new Sykes-Picot. The third one was the rise of a Syrian Mandela and a truth and reconciliation process. I really like that, and Canadians do too. The fourth one was a technological disruption and smart series.
You're talking about reconciliation between the Syrian regime and the rebels. Is that what you're talking about?
I don't know. It's worthy of discussion. What do you think? Potentially what
be
might be something other than Russia's going to do this because I know the future and I know Putin and he's like this. And all I can say is going all the way back to Jordan Peterson saying that Bill C 1016 would do this. It never did that.
Correct.
The future is not known.
Correct.
So you don't know who. Okay, so you're saying that you want to see a reconciliation, but reconcile what? Just curious.
I didn't say I want nothing. I said I like having open discussions like David Bohm would have. Really nice, open, wonderful conversations about things rather than STFU. I know more than you.
I don't think
Well, I
anyone's
asked you.
doing that.
I didn't say anything like that. First of all, I just asked you a question. I said, who's going to be reconciling? And you started telling me that I'm telling you to shut the fuck up. I asked you a question.
Any of those words. Pay attention to each one of my words as much as I do. I get
What does
paid a lot.
STFU mean? What does STFU mean?
Honestly, I think Saxon, you're trying to do some coaching here, and it's not convincing at all. You should try to engage in good faith, helpful discussions here. Like you're trying to coach the room right now. The room doesn't need to be coached by you. Just if you have something to share, clearly share your thing, and we'll talk about it. Does that make sense?
I just want to clear something quick about Syria. Why are we talking about Russia? Why are we talking about
Russia is relevant to the conversation of what's going on in Syria.
I know. I'm just making a point. Yeah, Syria suffers a lot from what happened from geography. Like that part of that region of the world is like a connecting bridge between Europe, between Africa, the Mediterranean Sea. You get access to all these bunch of places. That's where those areas are being, so they're so important to these other players, right? That's what we know. We can speculate that's what Russia will do. I mean, that's what they're doing in Georgia, in Ukraine. Just influencing stuff in Belarus. In Estonia, all these countries that they're similar to Syria, right? It's just that Syria has all these rebel forces, like all these different Shia, Sunni. Israel is there, right? So
I think you're right about that. The one point that I would personally somewhat disagree on is that if like Russia, like any other state, is allowed to say that a rebuilding process that will occur in Syria and forming a new government brings serious problems. And so I think staying focused on what that means, it's going to require, an extraordinary effort from within Syria in order to accomplish that. And so, just the way that I would sort of rephrase or start that conversation, if it was me having it, is that, like Syria at some point is going to have to answer how they treat the rest of the world, because states naturally just do that. They're naturally competitive. They naturally don't have any friends. So I think it's easy to get caught up in sort of, just the heuristic of what Russia is. But I don't think Russia is going to be behaving like anyone else would in the situation that they are truly being put in. What did Syria do for Russia before? I don't know, but it was probably something.
You mean like the naval base that Russia installed in Syria, that they allow them to, like the resources, like gas and oil, their bridge they are to Europe to ship this stuff elsewhere. Like they just increase Russia's influence in the region. That's what my starting point is Russia is up to no good, right? That's my starting point. And then after that, I mean, it's just looking at what Russia has been doing in everywhere they have an influence, they have some foothold on, right? And it's just up to no good. I mean, the Syria civil war, I mean, just keeping this guy in power, right? How many people died just because of Russia wanted to keep that influence, right?
Yeah, and I think from like floor to ceiling, like that's correct. But I don't know. I just wanted to voice, I'm not pro-Russian. I'm not anti-Russian. Not in this case. So.
Yeah, no, I get that.
And I will read. I had a chance. I really didn't understand what Svaxon was saying, but I've had a chance to read what he posted here. The rise of Syrian Mandela and the truth and reconciliation process. Imagine a charismatic leader emerges from within Syria, transcending sectarian and political divides and advocating for forgiveness, reconciliation, and a truth and reconciliation process inspired by South Africa. It's like, yeah, I mean, cool, but what is that going to look like when we have like secular rebel groups and Islamic fundamentalist groups and the more soft serve Muslim groups coming together to try and form a government? What would one leader look like that they could all get behind and be psyched about? I'm not sure I'd want to meet that person. But maybe it exists. I mean, I'm just a dumb ape. I don't know.
That's what I'm saying. We're all dumb apes. We don't really know what the future is, and we've been bred by our recent media world to think that we should all have an opinion right now.
Well,
and, patience is a virtue.
I think that sort of philosophy, it sounds nice, but the idea of any one person finding a place or a perspective, I don't know if that fits when there's a new government forming in what has been a hotbed of violence for the last decade.
Yeah,
arguably the last 5 decades.
If you say the wrong thing, war. This is a hot, sensitive area right now, and I just hope, I really do hope for the best, and human well-being becomes the first consideration.
I haven't heard anyone predict the future. I don't think
anyone. I just wanted to say as well. I forgot to say that too. That it's just like I don't think anyone's predicting the future. We're doing some speculation here, but the speculation is based on trends that people have come to know geopolitically and of the goings on, and I think that's completely fine. I think it's healthy to have conversations in the now, and we can come back to this issue in a few months and see how our predictions or how our sentiments may have changed.
Yeah, but we can talk about concretely what the effects of this are going to have, not just in the region, but the world. We can talk about the effects this is going to have in regard to Israel, Iran. We could talk about the influence that this is going to have in Ukraine. It tells me a lot about the lack of strength that Russia has. They're telling the world that they're going to fight against NATO and the United States if we do this, that, and the other.
Yeah.
But they can't even fight back some ragtag rebels in Syria, man. I mean,
yeah, they can't even win a war in the Ukraine.
Yeah, they can't even win a war in the Ukraine after 3 years. And they're talking about taking on NATO, the United States, and they're going to bomb London. I mean, what a joke.
Can I just say that when you guys chuckle like that, it makes me think about reviewing the past 2 years of people chuckling about how the war in Ukraine is going to be over in a week because either side is whatever. So the chucklers are people who have a sensibility that they have a understanding of the future that might not be. Trump will be in power soon. If the Palestinians in Gaza call his bluff, will there not be massive war because of that?
Well, there's a lot.
I don't know, man. I never said it was going to be over.
The chuckling is at Russia and Putin's impetus, being impotent in their abilities to carry out war in any any way that's effective. And that's been their history. They sacrificed 29. They sacrificed 29 million of their own people because of their horrible ability to wage war in a way that isn't just completely anti-human.
What, the Holodomor? Yes, they're very anti-human. As a Canadian, we feel a lot about that.
Yeah. Just another point against Russia. I'm really very against Russia. Okay, I don't find any redeeming stuff about it. But in 2015, right, when Russia started helping the Assad regime get back control, they were accused by NATO of weaponizing refugees, right? They were sending Syrian refugees were like going to Europe and causing all kinds of havoc, right? And division among people and all this stuff. Like this is just part of the toolkit of Russia. They don't care, right? How they go about pressuring the West or their strategy in Ukraine, like the mid-wave attacks. They just don't care, right? So it's just good that, to me, it's really good that Russia is losing control of Syria. I don't know what these people will do. I really wish they self-determine, define democracy. They help their women, all this good stuff, right? It's just given the story of this region where they are. It's like a pull, like a tug of war, right? They're just pulling every which side, so we don't know which they're gonna pick next, right? For their allies there, and I really hope that it's the West or Europe, but we'll see.
I agree 100%. Russia deserves our disdain. They deserve our condemnation. Russia is the biggest threat to freedom and democracy in the entire world right now. So I think if you don't have a little disdain for Russia, you're not really seeing things too clearly, in my humble opinion. I think Russia needs to be put in its place. I think Russia needs to be stopped here and now in Ukraine. I don't think this is an ambiguous issue. I don't think this is we're not thinking deeply enough about Russia. They have to be stopped. If we don't stop Russia now for a small price, the price the world's going to pay down the road is going to be incalculable.
So are you suggesting a breaking of the MAD doctrine and doing a first strike nuclear right now? Because I think that's the only option.
How did you
take care of Papa Putin. He's being mean. Come on, man.
No, how did you get the nuclear weapons?
Russia is doing a terrible job. Just look at what happened in Syria. They had control of Syria for God knows how many years, and they started a war in Ukraine. They can't, they're in a headlock over there, and they're still losing, control of the region in Syria, right? Like all of a sudden, okay, you no longer have Syria, right? Oh my God, we don't have the capability of keeping Syria and both fighting Ukraine, right? Which is what it seems that is happening right now. That's why they took that opportunity before Trump becomes president. Like, let's just go for it right now, because we don't know what Trump is going to do, right?
Well, according to Trump, he will have everything solved in a couple days or whatever ridiculous thing he said.
Yeah, of course he will.
Yeah.
But so one possible outcome from all of this, and maybe this is, I don't know how to say your name, Svexin or whatever it is. Maybe this is sort of what you were trying to say earlier.
Any way you like, without shame or fear. It's engineered to be said without shame or fear. You can call me by your name if you like.
It looks like 7-7. But one of the possible outcomes is that there's almost been this diaspora of Baathism. I don't know if that was, this sort of idea that when you actually take like the ideology of democratic socialism, and you figure out at some point in time in the future how you can have, ideally more intelligent forms of institutions that can represent versions of reality as we've seen everywhere in the world. And just in some senses, they're able to perform slightly better than how the U.S. has performed, I think, in the last election. Assad's, the downfall of the Assad regime or the Assad dynasty, whatever you want to call that, is an opportunity for that to hopefully emerge, which, again, if we can get to the point where, it still makes sense, that's an opportunity for Russia and Iran as well, which I think when we talk about aspects of polarity in the fairest way that we can talk about them,
and
that's not a bad thing.
And Nate, are you promoting Baathism as a good thing? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and obviously the Baathist government just got kicked out, but that I don't think that means that, you're wiping away 50, 60 years of what a lot of Arabs have thought, or Syrians have thought, a democratic system should look like.
Yeah, I mean the history of Baathism is wrought with authoritarianism. So that for some reason in those structures has always been a problem. But maybe some people are not I mean, because I would imagine you to be anti-authoritarianism, but
Yeah, I'm a deep anti-authoritarian.
Okay.
I think is what that is.
Yeah, and sectarianism, and there's some economic issues too. So, state-controlled economies and Ba'athist regimes often struggle with inefficiency, corruption, and stagnation due to the authoritarian control. But it's not that there aren't great things. All systems. There are all. Baathism also does promote forms of socialist doctrines as well, that are tailored to the traditions of Arabs. Yeah, I mean, looks like I mean, look, Ba'athist society is better than a fundamental Islamist society that subjugates or enslaves women. So
Yeah, and I think again, one of the, like, if we're being optimistic, patience is one of the harder terms to understand how it would work in the real world, because we can even look at like Iraq right now, and Iraq is still struggling with how like state energy control over the next 10 years, what does that look like? And they're asking the question. I think a lot of people think they're authentically and earnestly asking and trying to battle through it like anyone else or whatever. So good for you. And but like not treating whatever comes out of it like I guess like a little brother is like
yeah,
that's it's one possibility.
Yeah. All right. Well,
Was Libya Ba'athist?
Go ahead, F.
Was Libya Ba'athist?
Um,
just a question. I know Iraq was.
I don't think so.
No. Huh. Yeah, because I just hear people talking about, Syria is doomed. I hear a lot of people online yapping about this is the worst thing in the world for Syria. They're going to go the way of Libya. They're going to go the way of Iraq. It's just going to fall apart. And
I mean,
well,
it's suspicious. Getting away from Russia is going to lead to terrible outcomes. I mean, it could, right? But I mean, I don't think you can go worse than Russia.
No, but like I was saying, yeah, I mean, we're saying that now, but people are right to be cautious here, because it's the HTS, who is an Islamic militant group. Their history in Idlib is a history of what we see in Iraq and in Iran and some areas where there's just it's not a progression, it's a regression into fundamentalist traditional Islamic ideas that are anti-women, anti-human, and I don't want to see that happen in the region, and that's what people are worried about. But I agree with Justin Trudeau with saying that this is an opportunity. It is an opportunity. I don't know if there's going to be if Mandela is going to arise, like 7-7 said here, but or at least the idea.
I didn't say he would. I said the LLM suggested it as something that we can all think about as Canadians. Yes. We have that as an implicit thought. As an American Canadian, I would go, let's bomb them and turn them to glass. As a British American Canadian now, I have a different sensibility, a history to consider of three countries, and Canadian and Canadiana is all like peace and loving, and at least they're able to approach the idea. It would be nice if nobody was going to die. Just saying.
All right. Well, if nobody has anything else, I think we covered the topic today. We do have off-air voice channels for anyone that's new. I think most of you know that. So we'll probably deke down there in a bit. Thanks for everyone for joining us on YouTube. We covered the Syrian overthrow today, and I'm sure we'll be covering this topic many times over in the next year or so. And I really do hope for something better than the awful civil war that's been happening since 2011. But yeah, make sure you drop a like on the way out, and be sure to join us on Discord. Here's the link one more time for anyone that's interested in joining us, and we'll catch you next time. Thanks, everyone.